It's always a good sign.
Did all the technology work?
Well, we're just sitting here. Beck's doing all of the technology from that end, so that's okay. We have no part in the technology.
I know. Talk about the stress of it.
I know. I'm waiting for our slides to come up.
I'm trying. And we should have slides. And
look at you go.
There we go.
Well done, Beck. Okay. So how many participants do we have online? Shall we go?
Give me a little bit if you want.
I think Beck's turned off her audio recording as well.
I think so.
No, I'm just trying to put us live on Facebook, and I'm having some technical difficulties, but we're ready to go.
Ready to go. All right.
Go.
Well,
okay.
Let's get the show on the road. Welcome, Jamen. It's good to have you back here. Although you did make comment that I have reindeer antlers and you don't. You felt that
very disappointing.
It was disappointing.
Very disappointing.
So I'm going to make a mental note to get you some reindeer antlers so you can wear them. Would you like ones that jingle with glitter and stuff on them?
Preferably.
Okay,
yeah.
Excellent. I'll get on to that. So welcome to the end of 2020, and I think as we say that, everybody goes. That sounds like something that's really nice, the end of 2020. I was going to say this is our last webinar for the year, but I think Beck's dogged us in to do another one next week. So keep your eye on your email for that one about some important case law that's come out with Fair Work. And we do want to apologise that we did have to change the timing for the webinar today.
That was my fault. Sorry, everybody.
Oh, good help's hard to find. So as a quality presenter, we thought that we would take the opportunity to still capitalise on you being here. Otherwise, we were going to be doing this webinar on Christmas Day because that was the next available slot in your calendar. So we do apologise. It is all going to be recorded. So for those people that may be watching us after the fact, then great, welcome and good to have you with us. So we are live on Facebook and we're also streaming this one as well. So there will be a record after. So today we're going to talk about mental health in the workplace. And I think we've touched on mental health in one of our webinars that we've done before, and as a HR practitioner, it is something that is becoming such a huge impact, influence, problem, whatever you want to call it, in the world of managing employees. So today we're going to be talking about mental health in the workplace, and this is very much a webinar that is designed to help employers manage their workforce and try to understand where their obligations are and what they need to start thinking about if they haven't thought about it already.
Yeah. So
we do encourage questions, understanding that mental health is really, it's not a one-size-fits-all. So we're not going to be able to cover off on every topic, every scenario. And this is a broad, I guess, discussion about mental health in the workplace.
Yeah.
So, and we do understand that every case is specific. So if you are in need of assistance after the webinar, please just either jump on, send us an email, give us a call, and we can put you in touch with Jamie. We can pass the handball over to you because you're going down to Brisbane to do something exciting.
Yes, yeah. So I've been involved in a program for a little while now. We started at the beginning of the year, like with everything else. It's been sort of postponed, and we're starting to get back into full swing again. We're actually working with the Murray Courts in Brisbane to conduct mental health assessments of people before they go into court, to make sure that they haven't got any other issues that may be affecting their either ability to adhere to any court decisions, ability to sit in the court, or obviously, hopefully, not reoffend and get back into the same situation again.
Cool. So your exposure with mental health is not just in the area of workplace health and safety in a traditional sense from, general Joe Blow's fish and chip shop or whatever else. You're starting to get exposure and experience through a wide range of pathways. So,
yeah, absolutely. So in a past life, I used to work at Queensland Health. So I've been involved in the medical side of things from that point of view. But also, yeah, there's a number of projects that I'm on. This is one of them that are assessing mental health in a wide variety of areas. So this is in the court places. We also are running a program called Gutty, which is a mental health assessment tool that we're going to be running out in communities. So that's another little spot that we're getting involved in as well. So we've done a lot of those recently, and yeah, we're going to get more involved as the year goes on.
So safe to say that it's not just employers that are finding mental health to be the topic of the moment, so to speak. It is well and truly out there in the wider community, not just in relation to employees, but in all areas. And it's the struggle is real in managing the struggle for people who are struggling with mental health. Their struggle is also real, but it's not an isolated. One employer is not just feeling the impact of this.
No, it's across the board. So yeah, and the ones that we're running out in communities is in a roundabout way in relation to the NDIS and NDIA and how they're trying to manage it as well. Obviously, Murray Court is all the legal profession and how they're trying to manage it. So yeah, we're not pretending that it's an easy thing, and it's certainly not isolated as just employers in the workplace.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we've got some slides here that we're going to go through, and as you mentioned, Beck, if you're keeping an eye on the comments and the questions, you might just give us a heads up or a hi, or flick those questions over to us if and when they come through. Otherwise, we'll address all of the questions at the end. So let's kick off, and next slide. So the growth of mental health, like you don't have to be, I guess, Albert Einstein to realize that mental health is becoming a massive, I don't want to say problem, because it's not. It is a problem, but it's not really a good term for it. It's becoming it's
an awareness of it, I'd imagine, is becoming why it's becoming such a big thing. Yes, workplaces are becoming more stressful. There's a lot more there's a lot more responsibilities on people with the connections that we have at the moment. That people can't seem to get away from the workplace. That's making it harder. But I think workplaces have been stressful for a very long time.
Yeah.
So it's not about being even more stressful now. It's just that people are a lot more aware of it, and so people are now trying to address it, and people are starting to make claims and starting to say, well, this is not okay and I need help.
Yeah, because I think mental health awareness has been something that's been at the forefront for a number of years now. And obviously you've got those major campaigns like Are You OK Day and those sorts of things, which sort of focuses on that individual connection, like are you okay, and checking in with people and what to do and how to start those conversations. And I think through that awareness, would I be right in saying it's now filtered into all of the other I guess areas of people's lives, whether it be, as you're saying before, preparing for court, or whether it's a workplace situation. So the individual awareness is now just spread through the workplace, and that's a good thing.
Yeah,
it's challenging, but it's a good thing.
No, absolutely, and we'll talk about it later on, but increasing people's mental health, so making it better in the workplace, is going to make them more productive and is going to make your company more profitable anyway.
Yeah.
So it's something that we should have been really addressing a long time ago, and I think it's just a part of the workplace where if we put more focus on it now, as we are, and it's going to make the workplace better and everything more productive.
Yeah. Yeah, it's those flow-on effects. You get the right tools, right people in the right jobs at the right time with the right tools and the right equipment, your productivity is going to be better. So it's the same sort of application.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things that we will touch on, is that the fear of mental health. Oh my God, I can't say anything. I can't ask anybody if they've got anything going on at home, or are they not feeling themselves, or etc. And that fear has been a huge barrier, because there's so many pieces of legislation out there. You've got the Anti-Discrimination Act, you've got the Fair Work Act that says you can't discriminate against people who have a temporary absence from work due to illness or injury, or an addiction or an impairment. So that fear is a very real thing, and the barriers are real. And hopefully we'll be able to give you some tips today on how to move forward. Going back to the growth, because I always tend to jump ahead and whatever else. So talk us through what you've seen in relation to what's happened with mental health over the past 10, 15 years.
Yeah, so there certainly has been a massive growth in the awareness. And that's, as you said, come from an education program, which is probably, it takes a few years for everybody to get on board and it all starting to happen. The quickest people to get on board were people making claims, basically.
Yeah.
And so they were stressed at the workplace. They've left the workplace. They've gone to lawyers and solicitors who said, yes, you can make a claim. It's been around for a while, but this is how we can do that. And so the claims have just grown exponentially over the last 10 years.
Yep.
One, because it's only fairly new, and then two, a lot of employers aren't really aware on how to manage that correctly, manage stress in the workplace, so that they're not going to be liable when a claim does come up.
Yeah.
So it's been a bit of a mixture between not enough education to know how to manage stress claims, and that stress claims are an issue, or stress in the workplace is an issue. And then 2, not having all the policies and procedures and processes in place to show that you're managing that stress in the workplace correctly, so that you're not going to be liable further down the track. And we had that with just safety in the workplace. So if you go back 20, 30 years, when we weren't managing safety correctly, lots of people were making claims for manual handling, for injuries in the workplace, and we didn't have all the things in place to manage that correctly and show that we're doing the right thing. So a lot of those claims were coming through and being accepted. So it's just a matter of, and a lot of those injuries were happening, whereas we reduced those sort of manual handling and those sort of things dramatically. Lots more people in the workplace, and there's still lots of manual handling and injury claims, but we're managing them a lot better.
Yeah, and it's not just about having the policy in place.
Absolutely, yeah.
We've got policy, but do we actually administer it? Do we actually physically use it in the workplace? So you were telling me the other day that 10 years ago, approximately, about 0.8% of claims for work cover were because of mental health. So that would be what I would refer to as a psychological injury.
That's correct.
Through work cover.
Yeah.
Now it's 5% plus.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So again, and that's, as I said, it's awareness that it's actually available and it's something that workers can do, but it's also the lack and the lack of employers addressing that and having those processes in place and how they've implemented them and what they're doing to manage the stress in the workplace.
Okay. And it's definitely not a one size fits all. It's a problem and a solution. When the problem is there, the solution is there. But the solution for every business is going to be sort of marginally different depending on the makeup, the experience, the exposure of that organisation. So, and
that's probably the difficulty for mental health. Not the only one, but that's probably the biggest difficulty, in that if we've got people falling off balconies or going downstairs or slipping over, the things that you can do to stop that or prevent that is very, very clear. Yeah. Whereas the things with mental health and stress, the things that you can do to prevent that is going to be different for every single person and different for every single workplace. So it's something that is the hard part of managing mental health. But it also makes it easy in that there are a wide variety of solutions. So there's a lot of different options for employers to use and to address the problem, rather than just this is what you have to do and get it done. Yeah, and I have conversations with my dad, usually in the morning, wake up at 6:30 and there's nobody else up, and we go outside and we have a cup of coffee, and they're probably the best conversations of the day. And we quite often just talk about how so much has changed. When I first started, I remember my dad saying to me, when you go to work, you leave everything at home, you walk in the workplace, and you're there to work. Whatever else happens, it doesn't exist. And how much things have changed, and how we've had to adapt our management style to grow with it, and find those solutions to the problems that we have, and what sort of adaptability we can have with that. Yeah, and definitely mental health is definitely one of the spots where home life can very much affect your work life. All right, so next slide. So let's look at the cost of mental health. Now, these statistics, you can Google and you're going to get all of these. But what I found really interesting is we quite often talk about the cost, the global cost to the economy. So when we're talking about $220 billion per annum, that's obviously medical treatment, hospitalisation, and a whole bunch of other things. 2.8 million Australians have a mental illness. That's the anticipated, number. And then you've got another 440,000 approximately that care for somebody with a mental illness. And sometimes, the role of a carer, having been in that role myself, is very much, it's one of those roles that is, forgotten. And the ability for those people to maintain their own mental health when they have all of these other stresses going on, I don't think registers on the radar sometimes. Yeah. But even when I say these statistics, like 2.8 million, 440,000, that's all great. But I still default go back to the thinking, which I think a lot of employers do, and I'm not afraid to say it, because it's one of those self-awareness things that I go, well, what's that got to actually do with the employer? How is this the employer's fault? Or why is this the employer's fault? And that's where we have to change the thinking, because that's a very old school approach to how we manage injury in the workplace. And I think it's that point, it's that red flag for me to go, right, we need to switch.
So I look at it as a positive thing. If I'm aware of those thoughts, we can then change them.
No, absolutely. And there's two things about the cost of it. One, they're not always going to be the employer's fault why somebody's stressed at work.
Yep.
So that's not the thing. And we can talk about the work cover side of it, whether they can claim and all the legal side of that. The other part that is really important about the cost of that is that the employers are spending it. They've got to pay it.
Yep.
And so whether it's your fault or it's stress at at home, or it's stress in other factors, if you're addressing that, then you're reducing the cost of the workplace.
Yeah.
And so you're reducing your cost as an employer to make, again, your business more profitable and more productive.
Yeah.
So
and a healthier environment.
Yeah, by doing that.
Yeah. The absenteeism cost is a very real cost right to the employer's back pocket. So estimated 17 billion a year, with employees taking an average of 10 to 12 days off a year due to psychological distress. We're not talking about what the cause of the psychological distress is. We're just talking about mental health as an overall picture and what it actually costs. So then anything that the employer can then do, because we're talking in that workplace space, to assist employees in being able to deal with those psychological stresses, is then going to result in lesser absenteeism. It also then results in your work colleagues not becoming frustrated and having very low empathy levels for people who continually taking days off because they're having to pick up the slack. So it's that culture issue, it's the presenteeism, the absenteeism issue, which is that direct cost.
Yeah, and like most injuries in the workplace, the actual medical costs associated with an injury is minute compared to the loss of wages and the loss of productivity, and then the flow-on effects to one person's off work, and then, as you said, other people got to pick up the slack. That puts more stress on them, and then they take time off work, and then you just get a flow-on effect.
Yep.
And a huge amount of costs are coming from that loss of productivity and the loss of wages, not just the medical expenses. They're a very small amount of every claim or every injury.
Okay, so let's talk about the cost of actual work cover or psychological injury claims. So this is sort of the cost that nobody talks about, because when you think about work cover, you go, oh, well, it sort of operates on that no-fault system. So you might have claims that are accepted, which doesn't squarely place the blame on the employer or the employee, and you pay your insurance premiums every year, and you get that nice little work cover bill. You have to do your wages declaration, and you either pay it yearly or monthly or whatever.
Yeah.
So you're paying your insurance, so it's not actually costing me anything because I'm paying my insurance, and that's where you go.
No. Yeah. So that's the
wrong answer.
That's the biggest thing to remember about work cover, is that it's a user pay system. It's not like a car insurance.
And where does it say that on the paperwork? I mean, you worked for work cover for a long time, so where does it say that?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure that we still do. I'm not. Yeah.
Yeah, no, we don't put it. It's in the fine print. In the fine.
It's an
print.
experience-based rated system. That's probably as close as it gets. So yeah, it's not like your car insurance where you just pay a little set amount and then you just pay your premiums as you go, and it may go up a little bit depending on your claims, or it might go up, depending on your age or whatever. Experience-based rating system means that, and that's the little middle part there, is that every single dollar work cover pays on your behalf, you will pay back around about $1.50. So you will always pay back the claims costs that are paid out during a claim. And then there's a little bit on top for administration and future claims and all the other little bits and pieces. I could go into the calculations, but it's very, very boring. So just remember that any claim that is made, you will pay it back through premium. And the way they do that is that your experience-based rating system will go up, which means your premium rate will go up. And that can go anywhere up to, they've actually changed it a little bit since the last time I worked in work cover, in that there is a ceiling it can go up to, which is double your premium rate. So then you could be paying twice the premium because of claims, and that can go on for quite a long period of time before it even starts to look at going down, depending on your claims history. There is another clause in the legislation, though, and that, again, to be aware of, that if you are seen to be onerous or just being going above and beyond your claims, so having a huge amount of claims and not doing anything about it, they can actually go in and say, well, it's going to go above the ceiling now because you're getting way too many claims.
So I suppose whilst we, sort of commonly look at it that, work covers paying the wages and the medical treatments, etc., we may have paid the first 4 days, or is it still the first 4 days?
For the excess period, yeah.
So, and we don't, then we see the premium cost. Sometimes I think that employers may then very well forget about this whole $1.05, this back pay. Whilst we don't pay for it out of our pocket on the day, or at the treatment or when the claim is finalised, there is going to be that back payment. So what happens then is, does the same principle apply? So if we might get to a point with a work cover claim where we reach stationary and stable, and the claim's going to be closed off by work cover, and there might be a permanent impairment rating that's been assigned by the Queensland Tribunal, and they offer a lump sum payment. Let's just say, for the sake of the exercise, the lump sum payment might be $30,000. And if the employee chooses to accept that $30,000 payment to finalise the claim, what happens with that $30,000?
Yeah, so we use 5 years at work cover for experience to calculate your premium rate. And so the first 3 years is statutory, the second years is the common law. Again, not going into all the full-on details, which basically means that at least for 5 years, that any claims cost is going to be affecting your premium. And then if you have a look at that calculation, because we use 5 years, if it's a common law, which goes towards the end of that calculation. So that means if we know in the first year that there's going to be a common law in the 5th year that we're going to calculate, that means it can sit there. So then it's going to take another 5 years for that to actually drop out of the calculation.
Yeah.
And so then that means that your premium rate will be at that high level for up to 10 years before it even looks like going down.
Yeah.
And then once they all drop out, if you've had no other claims at all, that means after that 10 years, then it can slowly start going down, which then may be another 5, 10, 15 years, depending on, and again, it's based on the amount of wages you pay, but if it's a small amount of wages, it could go on for a very long time.
Yeah. And I guess this is the thing that I'll say it again, we forget about, because it's not actually coming out of our pocket. And I think when we talk about employer rectification and getting the employer buy-in for changing the way in which we do things, it's usually that direct cost impact. So this is going to save you. So the same as what you were talking about before, when we got better at managing workplace health and safety, we got better at doing risk assessments, we got better at doing things like manual handling and loading trucks and unloading trucks and all of that.
Yeah. We're
going to get better at mental health. We are.
Absolutely.
And that's going to have a direct cost saving benefit the same way. So if we're with manual handling, mental health, same.
Exactly the same. And that's, yeah, and we'll talk about it when we go to managing risk in the workplace and go managing mental health. It's exactly the same. So you should be managing mental health in the workplace exactly the same way you would manage manual handling risks in the workplace, slip and fall risk in the workplace, looking after your buildings, plant and equipment, the maintenance of it.
Yeah.
It should all be exactly the same.
Yeah. Okay.
And the other thing that we've got there as well is that, and very unique in regards to mental health, is that the starting cost of a mental health claim, a stress claim, is huge compared to every other type of injury.
Why is that?
To assess somebody, we need a psychologist or a psychiatrist and a counsellor, and you can't assess somebody instantly.
Yeah.
Whereas if you've got a broken leg, you can go in, see a GP, they'll tell you you've got a broken leg, go get a scan, very small costs.
Yeah.
If we're assessing somebody's mental health and whether there's been that the employer is at fault in regards to a stress claim in the workplace, one, we have to assess what level of mental health or what level of claim it's going to be, whether it's a psychological or it could be like post-traumatic stress disorder or just a normal stress claim.
Yeah.
That takes a while to assess. Then we also need to interview lots of people. So we need a private investigator to go in and do an assessment on that and interview everybody, put all the report together. If we get, as opposed to counsellors and psychologists, a very big difference in costs in regards to getting them to meet people 2 or 3 times it might take. All that is before the claim is even accepted.
Yeah.
So then if the claim does get accepted, and you've got it on the slide there, it could be up to 15,000, even more, like minimum 15,000. Once you talk about counsellors, psychologists, private investigators, and then all the time it takes to do all that process, it's a huge amount of claim right at the beginning.
Yeah, and the treatment for the person with obviously the changes to the workplace health and safety legislation, where they're providing treatment straight off the bat, whether or not the claim's accepted or not, because it's been proven that that early intervention and the early access to that treatment is going to reduce the severity of the injury.
Yeah.
And whilst if the claim is not accepted, then that's not passed on to the employer.
Not directly, but it is still.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's still
in the fine.
That's the 0.5.
Fine.
Yeah, that's the 0.5%. So as we said in the last slide, that it's $1.50 that you pay back. So it's $1 in the claim. So every dollar that's paid out, it's $1.50. It's $1 for the claims cost. It's 50 cents to recoup admin, and then all that investigation that we would do, or work cover, sorry, would do. I keep saying we are not there anymore. All the investigation that work cover would do for those claims that don't get accepted, that they can't pass on directly.
Okay.
So then that's where that comes into it.
So in a nutshell, managing mental health in the workplace is going to save you a significant amount of money, because we know that the ability to lodge a psychological injury claim, I'm not saying whether people should or shouldn't, but the ability to lodge it and the number of claims being lodged is
going through the roof.
And even this year, the number of clients that we've been involved in that have had psychological injury claims lodged is more than I have ever seen. So it's only going to get worse. 2021, we don't know what 2021 is going to look like. We certainly didn't know what 2020 was going to look like. So the compounding effect of it. And look, we know that there are our fair share of maybe dodgy employees out there, but there's a fair share of dodgy employers out there as well. So, that will lodge claims because it's an easy process. And it's not an easy process, but the trauma involved in actually having to have that claim lodged in the first place, which is why we need to have all of this risk management stuff and the practices in place.
Yeah. And there's also, again, because this is a fairly new thing compared to a lot of other like injuries and claims, it's something that is still a little bit grey. So it's still something that people are lodging, not knowing whether it's going to be done or not. Whereas, as I said, with the broken leg, it's very straightforward. And if someone's broken their leg outside of work and they say, oh, well, we know it's outside of work and everyone's happy, they don't lodge the claim. Because they know and everybody knows it's not going to work. Whereas with a psychological claim, that's a very big grey area.
It's a blurred
so
line.
Lots of people are lodging them where they may not be accepted, but they're still going to be the cost. So they're still going to be going back to employers. So the more that we can do to address it and make sure that it's not going to happen, and people are educated and people know what the boundaries are, and they know they're being looked after, they're less likely to lodge claims against you if they know that they've got a good workplace and everybody's happy.
Yeah. Okay.
And that goes across the board for everything.
Yeah, pretty much. All right. So I guess, and this may be something that I guess we really just need to emphasize, is that when we talk about what is the employer's role, because like I said, being out the back, having a conversation with my dad, talk about you leave all of your work, your personal life stuff at home, you don't take it into work, and it's not the employer's job. It's really not the case.
Not entirely, no. So we've got, and you can see there, it's a primary duty of care and there's about, I don't know, I can't remember now, is there 9 or something like that, primary duty of cares. And so it's all about providing training, providing a safe workplace, maintaining plant equipment, doing all those things. So one of those things is monitoring the health of workers in the workplace. So that is just one of the primary duty of cares.
And it's not the workplace health, it's just health.
Health, absolutely, yeah. So it's health of your workers, it's health of the environment that they're working in. So all those things is one of the primary duty of cares. It's just something you have to do. A lot of people come to me initially when they're concerned about it and say that they're really worried about how do I manage that and what can I do and what can I ask. It's exactly the same as every other type of injury. Yeah, you need to manage it as you would anything else, and don't be afraid to ask a question. If it's something that I don't want to talk about, that's fine. I don't have to talk about it, but you do have to show that you're managing it.
Yeah.
And so, like everything else, if somebody has issues with it, you notice that they're limping when they come to the workplace, you go up to them and say, hey, did you hurt yourself while you're at home? Or did something go on? Or are you okay? Exactly the same type of questions in regards to mental health. So if they're coming in, acting differently, missing lots of missing lots of days from sick leave, or just being different, it's okay to go in and say, hey, is everything okay? Is there something we can do? Is there something that we need to put in place to help manage whatever it is?
Yeah. And I think one of the biggest frustrations for employers comes about that they'll get to a situation where they're going through a disciplinary process with an employee, and it could very well be some habitual lateness to work or irrational responses to, customers, whatever.
Yeah.
And we'll sit down and we'll go, well, what's your response to the allegation? And it's at that point where there's a disclosure that there is a mental health issue, or that they are suffering from depression or anxiety or any of those mental health conditions. And obviously the employer, not being a medical professional, not being able to ascertain whether that's legitimate or not, when I say the diagnosis, I mean, that causes that frustration, because the employer then may develop a perception that it's not real. And that you're only doing it to avoid that disciplinary action, which is why when we start to talk about that prevention, having the prevention steps in place so that you can demonstrate even before you got to that disciplinary session or that process that you had reasonable management action for managing mental health in the workplace.
And that's probably the two biggest points out of that, what you've just said then, is that it's too late then. It's too late by the time it gets to that point where they've got performance issues or any other issues that you sit down and talk to them and they bring it up. It's too late at that stage then to show that you've been having reasonable management for the whole time. So like every other risk in the workplace, if you can show you've got reasonable management action in place, then it's less likely that any type of claim or dispute or anything like that is going to come back to that stress claim, or going through all the other avenues that you can go through legally. So you need to have those things in place initially to make sure that you can show that you've got everything and that you'll be doing everything that you need to up until that point. And then when they bring it up, then you need to have all those steps in place to how you would manage that and what you would do to address the issue once it's been brought to your attention.
Okay. So what we're saying is, in layman's terms, you need to keep an eye on your workforce and you need to make sure they're okay. How we do that? It's a $64,000 question. It's easy. No worries. But the key message here, and this was added by Jamen to the slides just before, because it is a key message, is not to be afraid of managing mental health.
Absolutely. So
because I can tell you now that there's probably 9 out of 10 employers out there going, "Are you crazy?" Because managing mental health, I'm petrified of it, because there are so many different pieces of legislation that say, I can't discriminate against somebody for an illness or an impairment, and I can't do this and I can't do that. But it's not about what you can't do and what you can do. It's about that reasonable management action, about risk mitigation.
And then showing them what you can, what you did do and what you are doing. So if you can show that you're doing lots of things to help manage stress, and that you've asked the question and you've got records of talking to these people over and over again about, are they feeling okay and everything is fine, then they come down 3 months later and say, everything isn't fine. You've asked the question, and that's one of the biggest steps that you can do. So if you said, I've put out there as much as I possibly can that I want to help you manage your mental health in the workplace, and they don't take up the opportunity, that's okay. They don't have to, but you've shown that you've done reasonable management action. And so that can be half the battle. So then if they do stand up and say, yes, can you help me? And these are the things I would like you to do. That's when it starts to get a little bit hard, because sometimes they might say, hey, that's just not possible. Which is fine, but we need to work through that and show why it's not possible. So that first step of just asking them and making sure that everybody is absolutely 100% aware that the workplace is capable of helping you in your mental health issues that you're having in the workplace, that's half the problem. The second half then is the logistics of it, and then we can manage that and we can go through that process. But if you haven't done that first 50%, you're opening yourself up to huge amounts of liability. And then if just by doing that and everyone saying, no, I'm fine, you're stopping that. You're stopping that fact of somebody saying, you didn't do anything to help me and you didn't do any reasonable management action. So the next stage is,
And I think it's probably an opportune time for us to say, when we talk about you have to do all of these things, you have to do all of the things, and like we're going to roll out a list of 500 things that you have to do. It doesn't have to be that hard.
No, as I said, asking if you're okay is a massive step, and it's one of the biggest ones you can do. Because everyone says, I am okay, you don't have to do anything else. But then as soon as they start saying we do, that's when we get into the next bits. All
right, so how do we monitor the workforce? Because the PCBU, the primary objective and the primary thing that we had on the previous slide, the technical
business of undertaking.
Give me a fair work acronym and I'm all over it. Give me a workplace health and safety one that's left field. So we talked about you have to keep an eye on your workplace. So in layman's terms, we have an obligation as an employer to keep an eye on our workplace to make sure they're okay. So how do we do that?
So the left-hand slide there we've got there, or left-hand part of the slide there, is what you would do prior to an employee saying anything. Yeah, so it's showing that you're having these meetings. So a lot of people just say, well, we have toolbox, toolbox talks meeting, or we have staff meetings where everybody gets down and sits down and we say we have any issues and we talk through that. That is a really hard area if someone is having mental health problems to actually bring anything up.
Yeah.
So we don't want to rely solely on 20 people sitting in a room and you're saying, is everybody okay? Yeah, because they're not going to bring up personal stuff. They're not going to bring up work-related stuff. It's very common that people would hide that in front of everybody.
Yeah.
So having those one-on-one meetings, and again, they don't have to be formal meetings. They can be places where people are working by themselves, or where they come in and talk to you on a different matter, and then you say, hey, now that we're alone, just wanted to make sure, just wanted to touch base. I know I asked it in the toolbox meeting or the staff meeting, but just wanted to make sure everything is okay.
Yeah.
Is there anything you want to talk about? And then you could do that, and then obviously making sure you record that, and then that was happening.
Because that's the biggest challenge that we have, is that it's not recorded.
Yeah.
And it's easy for us to say, yeah, you should book in one-on-one, health checks with your employees, just about a health check in relation to the employment relationship. How's your workload? How's the interaction of that new system going? How are you leading up to Christmas? What about your leave? Let's have a look at your management plan and see what, if you've got huge amounts of annual leave, you haven't taken any, and how is your mental health?
Yeah. So and it is hard to book those dedicated meetings for that, but you don't. Yeah, it doesn't have to be.
No.
So if you just have those little meetings every now and then, that's all it needs to be. You
have to record it.
You have to record it.
You have to record it somewhere. Whether or not you then start as an employer develop like a little checklist or check sheet or file. We seem to be really good about documenting everything they do wrong most of the time. About doing a file note, and it's basically the date, the time, and what was the question that you asked, and what was their response.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's
does the employee need to sign it?
Not necessarily.
Because you have to establish the practice.
Yeah.
So it's all about being able to demonstrate that it's a regular practice in the workplace.
And if you've got people in the workplace and you're asking every single person that, it's not going to be hard for an investigator to come in and go, has this been happening? Yeah. And someone will say, yeah, comes and asks me every week, or yeah, he asks me all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's not a drama. It doesn't have to be that formal level of recording, but obviously the more formal it is, the easier it is for you to prove that it's happening.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. The other part of it is that we've got absenteeism there and review and leave taken. There's the other side of it. Before the employee says anything, this is something you can do within the workplace to show that you're trying to manage stress and stress in the workplace. So seeing when they're taking leave. Yeah, if they're always taking it Monday and Fridays, or if they're always taking it if you have a particular busy day and they're always taking it on that day, or things like that. Yeah, or the day after. Just look at that type of stuff. Again, it could be that they just want a long weekend, and that's fine. Yeah. So that you just have to show that you're doing it.
Yeah.
So if you have a look at it and you go, oh, this person's taking Friday off all the time, and you say, well, okay, maybe I need to sit down and talk to them. You sit down and talk to them and go, hey, why are you always taking Friday off? And they just go, oh, sorry, it's just because I wanted a long weekend, or I wanted to go away with my partner somewhere, or whatever it is. That's fine. You've done your job.
Yeah.
You've managed it. You've shown how you're trying to manage it, and you've asked them the question, and they've said it's fine.
And the consequence of the action after that then is not a mental health related issue. So if they're continually taking it off because the tides are good and they want to go fishing, then we have an absenteeism management issue, and not so much a mental health issue. Exactly.
Yeah. And then that's your department. I'm not dabbling in the HR side of things.
Oh, come on. You know you want to.
And same with the reviewing the leave taken. So it could be either or. Yeah. Like you said, if someone's got a huge amounts of leave and they're not taking any, that's a problem in itself. And then the other way around, if they're just constantly taking leave as soon as it's available, then that can show that's a problem.
And I think this is really relevant right about now, because there's been a lot of workforce burnout studies done this year, particularly with COVID, because it seemed to be the trend that I'm not going to take my leave because I can't go anywhere. So people not taking that break from the workplace, and then the fatigue that sets in, and then the little niggling things that it's this giant snowball, because even though they may not want to take leave because they want to go to Hawaii or whatever it might be, and they can't do it, they don't find sitting at home relaxing, so they're not taking leave, and then that flow-on effect and burnout. The predictions for the early part of 2021, pretty scary from a workplace burnout perspective, because of so much has happened in such a short period of time. So much change has happened. People's work life has been turned upside down. Their personal lives have been turned upside down. And we're trying to get people through, and they have been burning the candle at both ends. So the predictions for next year are even more than this year, or even higher.
And that's probably one that we didn't. We've got external staff surveys there as one of the ones that you can, when you start getting a bit more proactive. But that could be also part of just having your eyes open and being aware of the workplace.
Yeah.
So sometimes employees are their worst enemy.
Oh, yeah.
And they're like, they just work themselves hard and then wonder why they're crashing and burning.
Yeah.
So it might be something that you need to be monitoring and just see if their performance is coming down. If you see that they're more irritable or they're acting differently, that might be your cue to bring them in and say, hey, what's going on? Do you need to take some time off? They might say, oh, well, I've got nothing to do. But they say, well, you know, I've noticed that you've been a little bit, you know, short around the place and you might need to take some time off. So go and get some days off.
That because the Fair Work modern awards say that you cannot direct an employee to take leave unless they have excessive leave accrued. So Fair Work, bless Fair Work, is flying in the face of what mental health and awareness and risk mitigation is. So a lot of employers go, I can't ask them to take leave because the award says I can't direct them. So there's a big difference between a discussion around what you're noticing and encouraging that the employee may need to avail themselves of even a long weekend or whatever versus directing them to take leave. Two very, very different things.
Yeah, and again, this is where the two legislations sort of butt heads, because it is your job under work health and safety to monitor the health and well-being of people in the workplace. So if you're seeing that there is an issue, the safety legislation is telling you need to do something to step in and to make sure that they're going to be okay. So that is, that's annoying, but it's something, again, not directing them, it's just having that discussion to say, this might be a good idea.
That's it. And having leave management discussions in your catch-up meetings with employees is really good, because it starts to then set that expectation of, okay, well, we're going to have a conversation about when I'm going to be taking leave, so I need to be planning for that. What are you pointing at my screen for?
Is there number 2? Does that mean there's people asking stuff?
We got questions. We'll come to them at the end, I think.
Okay.
No, go back.
Oh.
No, let's go forward. Go back.
Oh, that's the one.
That's the one. All right. External staff surveys. This is a really good place to start if you've not done anything, because it's basically surveying the workplace and getting a lay of the land. And we do quite a lot of external staff surveys because you could do them internally. Sometimes people, if you haven't got that practice of having open communication and if people saying that they're not okay is not going to be met with fear and retribution, external staff surveys are a really good place to start.
Absolutely. And they don't have to be huge, expensive operations. It can be very simple, a couple of questions online. And then, someone else managing it puts all the responses together and gives you a report. And then basically you can have just ask simple things like, what would make the workplace better? What would make it, what would make it less stressful? What do you want to see in the workplace? Just really, really open, basic questions. And it can be very, very simple things. It can be the things that make people happier in the workplace. The one that I use when I used to work, I obviously run my own business now, so I don't have to worry too much about taking lunch breaks and things like that. But a big thing for me was I couldn't do a half-hour lunch break. It was annoying because I eat huge amounts of food.
You do. I've had lunch with you many, many times.
And I couldn't get my lunch break in half an hour, and it was just annoying because I'd never get enough food and I was always angry. And so I went to one of my managers at one stage and just went, look, I need to take a longer lunch break. Can I have an hour, hour and a half, 2-hour lunch break? And I'll come in early and leave late. And that was awesome for my manager because they always had somebody early to open up the office and make sure everyone was always, someone there when they first opened. And they always had somebody there to close up and close everything up. So it was actually really, really good for them. And it was really, really good for me. And so that was a way that you could reduce the stress of myself. But again, very, very simple, helped everybody. As in the employer was happy, I was happy, and so there's no drama. So it can be very, very simple things like that.
Also, we've got down there appropriate workplace improvements, which is what you're talking about, lunch breaks, meal breaks. What can we do? EAP programs, which are employee assistance programs, are becoming almost a necessity.
Yeah.
Almost.
Yeah.
Almost. They are a cost to the employer, but they are quite cost effective when we start talking about the comparison costs for absenteeism versus EAP. And so you'll see the word EAP floated around a lot, and there are a lot of external providers. And essentially what it is you're paying a premium for either based on the number of employees you have or whatever program you sign up for, where then your employees can access services in relation to, might be financial counselling, marriage counselling. I know I used to work in an organisation that had a tutor for my, I could access a tutor for my children.
Yep.
For me, not having to go home and do homework was like, oh God, I would have kissed the ground on which my employer walked on,
Yep.
just for that. So EAP programs, if you haven't actually done some significant investment in having an EAP program, put that on the 2021 list.
And we've been doing it for ages for physical injuries.
It's always seemed to be, though, that if you worked for a big employer, you had an EAP program. It's not the case.
No. And as I've been doing this for quite some time, and the physical side of things, that people have had EAP programs for a very long time. So it's just about expanding those services. It doesn't have to have all the bells and whistles, but again, do that staff survey and ask what do they need? What do they want?
All right. Next slide, then. So how do we prevent it? I love this because this is it's me all over. Don't bite off more than you can chew, right? So you were telling me some great stories the other day when we were talking about this. So we're going to go out, we're going to get people moving, we're going to do all these social activities, we're going to get people more connected, we're going to get everything done, and then we realise we've gone way too big and it's not manageable and it just falls by the wayside. So then next time we try to go again, our employees go, oh yeah, here we go again. But you were telling me a cracker story about a business who wanted to get their employees moving. And so they were doing fire drills, and the other one was the touch footy team.
Oh, yeah. So some of my pet hates from the safety point of view is making sure that when you introduce these things, we don't introduce more risk. Yeah, that's a really big thing. So again, start small, little things. Sports teams within businesses, they're really, really good socially. So if people want to start them outside the workplace, wonderful. Do not start them as an employer.
Just
don't do it. Because if you're saying, okay, everybody, we're going to be part of a touch football side, or a netball is another one that happens a lot. Yeah, they're the two biggest types of injuries we have in sport. So netball is disgusting for injuries. And so the last thing you need to do is have half your workforce off on knee injuries and ankle injuries on an activity that you started, which then starts making
to reduce their stress.
Starts making it really great from a work cover point of view. Because if they say, oh, well, I felt like I had to go to play netball because it was a big work thing that we were doing, and then they bust their knee, then it becomes a work-related injury. So, don't do those things. Really, really bad.
Yeah.
And then, and be mindful of your workplace as well. So I've seen places where it's like a heavily industrial, or like sort of like manual laborers, building sites, mechanics and things like that, and then introducing airy-fairy things like doing yoga classes. They don't like it. They don't like doing those things. I'm not saying all of them, but it's primarily.
Or you might have a group of people that may not be active.
And then starting to get them to do things that are very active, and then again hurt themselves.
Yeah.
So just don't do it. Be very careful.
I think if we can get you to focus on one thing from today, it's about those little checks and balances that you can put in the workplace. That you don't have to go and do all these grand gestures. Just developing those systems where you're doing those check-ins, and you start documenting those check-ins, and you start to look at it and make a staff survey. Little things that have a big impact that you can do consistently.
Yeah, and as I say, when you do those staff surveys, you'll be very surprised about there's the minute things that people come back with. Pizza Fridays. Yeah, that's a really big one.
Yeah, Pizza Fridays, or in my husband's workplace, it was Barbecue Wednesday.
Yeah.
Barbecue Wednesday.
Nice.
Except they had the employees cooking the barbecue. So
yeah.
We won't talk about burns.
Yeah, no. Yeah, that's right.
All right. So assess your workplace. Find out what they want. It's not about what you want. You're not trying to manage yourself. You are trying to manage them or look after them. So ask them what they want.
We've talked about the personal stresses. So again, just being aware of them. You can't fix somebody if they're having problems at home with their partners. It's not something you have to fix. It just has to be something you're aware of. And just asking them if they're okay and is there anything we can do to help might be enough. to make them go, oh, thanks, you actually care.
Yeah.
So that could be a really big thing for them.
That's it. And it may very well be that they just need maybe half a day off for some legal appointments, or they may have been having some relationship issues, and until they can work something out, they may just need to be able to, duck out for 20 minutes to take the kids from school to vacation care.
Yeah.
And I understand from an employer's perspective, you've got 400 or 500 employees. You can't have everybody doing all of this sort of stuff, and that becomes the next management issue. Not so much managing it in the workplace, but how you then logistically manage it.
Yeah.
And that's a whole other conversation.
And then the clear communication, that's huge. Yeah, people actually know what is expected of them. They actually know what's happening in the workplace. If there's going to be a big change coming up, that they've been talked about it, that the change is something that they're not necessarily always want, but something that they're aware of, and they know the reasons why things are happening. It makes a huge difference. Yeah. So just make sure that everything that you're doing, even though it is your business and you run it how you want to, you need to talk to them about how you're doing it and why you're doing it, so that if people understand things, they're less likely to be stressed about it.
Yeah. That's right. And I think it's really important to remember, we said before, staff survey is a really great place to start if you're just starting out on the management of mental health in your workplace. But it's not your job to eliminate stress.
Yeah, there can be still stress in the workplace. That's still not your fault.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's not what, again, we're not trying to say it's fault. We said that right at the beginning. And if you can show reasonable management action, then it won't go through a work cover claim.
Yeah.
So that's not what you need to worry about. You need to make sure that you're managing it correctly, whatever the stresses in the workplace are, whether they're stresses within the workplace, because workplaces can be stressful. That's just how they operate. Performance management things can be stressful. Having deadlines can be stressful, but that's all part of the workplace. Yeah. So as long as you're managing them correctly, then they're not going to turn into a work cover claim.
Yeah. All right. Next slide. So mental health first aid training, this is like the new buzzword.
Yeah, it's huge.
It is huge. So there is an accredited mental health first aid training, and we had a chat about this the other day, and it basically teaches you to identify a problem, assess its severity, and take appropriate action. But it's not for the faint-hearted.
No, it is. It's a pretty full-on course. So there's a few different types of courses you can do. My business, I offer a non-accredited course, which is basically more of an awareness training and things like that, where we're just sort of talking about the things to look out for and the things that you can do, the questions you can ask.
Yeah.
The other ones, sorry.
So how we say to employers all the time that you should be doing annual refreshers on codes of conduct and sexual harassment, discrimination. It needs to be in that.
Yeah, same. It's a first aid course. So first aid training every 12 months.
That's why they call it mental health first aid. Get out.
So first aid is you've got to do CPR every 12 months. You've got to do first aid every 3 years. And I'll be doing the same with mental health first aid. Yeah. So having a number of people in your workplace trained to be aware of those situations. As I said before, keeping your eyes open. As an employer, as the employee, you may not be on the work, out on the coal face of the workplace. You may not be able to see all those changes, all those subtle changes in your employees all the time, but you need to have eyes that do.
So it's almost like, remember the old contact officers? Yeah. So are we getting to the point where we potentially going to have like the re-establishment of those contact officers, but their focus may very well be a little bit different?
I think we're moving towards that. Yeah. And so having those accredited training, and then we've got their Thrive as a workplace here through WorkLink, I think they are. Yeah. So they offer an excellent course that goes over 2 days. That's 2 consecutive Fridays. I believe the reason why they do that, and I think they're still doing that, hopefully, as in doing it over 2 consecutive Fridays,
Too much.
is that it is a very hard course. So if you're talking about mental problems and going through scenarios about what has happened to people and about the things that can occur, it is a big thing. And so most of us have had issues where we've had mental problems. Where we've been stressed, we've been worried about things, we've been depressed about stuff, people passing away in the family. Those have happened to all of us. And going into this course and sitting down and talking about it and how you felt during that time is hugely confronting. It's not something that people can take lightly. But it's an amazing course. I've done it. I've really enjoyed it, and I know a lot of people that have gone through it and thought it was very useful.
And so then you've got the accredited bit, and then as you said, your business can come in and do something that's probably a little bit more tailor-made, for want of a better word, and relevant to the workplace. Maybe even some management training and employee awareness. You could, there's lots of different, I guess, avenues that you could mold a training.
Absolutely, yeah. And if you can't have everybody commit to those 2 days, which is very understandable,
they could get you to record. We're all in virtual now.
Yeah.
And they could log on and watch it.
Yeah. And maybe just doing a couple of hours, or just just doing things like that, and doing it over a long period of time. So doing it over a year, coming in once a month, and just doing a few hours here and there. So something's a little bit smaller, just to make sure that all the workforce is having access to that knowledge and being aware of it. The more eyes you have out there looking around for mental health in the workplace, the better it's going to be.
Yeah. Okay. So there are your options. Causing factors of stress in the workplace. We know this, but we forget it. Bullying and harassment, we think that is probably the #1 cause, but strangely enough, it's not the big incidents. It's the series of little incidents that have happened. Jamen, you keep moving my coffee cup. I don't like you moving my coffee cup. And it just builds up and builds up and builds up until something snaps.
Yeah.
And I see this from also a work, from a HR perspective. We quite often deal with the end cause. So we might have, Jamen and I have got into a bit of a fisticuff outside work, and of course I would never hit Jamen. Jamen wouldn't hit me, but maybe
she'd beat me up, no dramas at all.
Maybe you've ankle tapped me as I'm walking to my car or something like that. And as employers, we go, right, well, Jamen, you've breached the code of conduct, so disciplinary action for you, and Deanne, you did it as well, so here's disciplinary action for you. Right, all done. But we fail to address what's happened as to why you ankle tapped me in the car park.
Yeah.
And I think me as an accredited mediator, we don't look at the reasons why it's happening. So, and it was probably because you kept moving my coffee cup, but we never spoke about it.
Yeah, and it's very, very often those very, very small things that would cause that over, as you said, over a very long period of time. I've had people that I've been dealing with cases where somebody used to always hide the person's lunch, and everyone thought it was a fun, and everyone used to do it to each other. One person took it particularly badly after about 6 months and lost it.
Yep.
I've had people where they've had personal issues in regards to being held up at knife point, and then has been going into work, and then when people have had birthday parties, so you have birthday parties in the workplace, they bring in a cake, someone brings out a big knife to cut the cake. And they used to, over a long period of time, that was kept stressing her, and she knew every couple of days there was going to be a birthday party because there was quite a number of people in the workplace. And so eventually she just got to a point where she didn't come to work.
Yeah.
And so, those very, very small things that if someone had to stop and ask the question, notice that they were missing work, notice that they were getting more irritable, very easy things to fix up.
Yeah.
And so those things was obviously brought in after the fact, and they were taking time off work and doing all that sort of stuff. And then it's very, very hard to come back. But if it was something that we could have gone in initially and said, oh, that's terrible. Of course, that seeing a knife all the time is going to be stressful for you. How about we cut the cake in the kitchen before we bring it out? Yeah. And problem solved.
Cupcakes.
No one's problem. Yeah, cupcakes, little tarts, whatever it is. Or like I said, hiding their lunches all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just, wait, stop it. You're being an idiot.
Yeah.
And then we're all happy. But then it gets to a point where there is a fight, there's a big blow up. They don't want that person back in the workplace because of all those issues. They don't want to come back to the workplace because of all the issues.
Yeah.
They said no one's done anything. No one's asked me the question. There's no reasonable management shown because you didn't know, but then there's nothing shown. So then it becomes a claim.
Yeah.
Very, very simple things that could have been easily fixed.
Yeah. Workload, it's not just excessive workload. It's also people that don't have enough to do.
Don't have enough. Don't feel as other people are pulling their weight. So it could be everything's getting done and everybody's happy, but someone's not doing it properly. Could be heaps of different things.
Yeah. Or somebody may be feeling as though that their work's being taken away from them, and they're being pushed into a corner and they're not giving any work to do, so they start to erode their self-confidence, and then we get those other sort of mental health challenges coming in.
Or LinkedIn with the bottom, not having the right equipment.
Yeah.
So, warehouse is another example. I've had one where there was the push forklifts. What are they called? When you just have to pump
trolley jacks.
Trolley jacks, that's what they're called. A little mental blank there. And the trolley.
Okay.
Yeah, I should be fine, thank you. Yeah. And it was just a really dodgy old one. And so he had to use that all day, every day for his job. and he got his job done all the time, but it's just annoying. And eventually he got to a point where he just had enough and pushed a full load on the trolley jack into the shelving, caused some damage, had disciplinary action, and then it was a big, massive issue where it could have been a very, very small thing of getting the wheel replaced.
Yeah. Yeah, I was dealing with a client up on Thursday Island, and the biggest frustration for them is they need a new internet modem. And you go, okay, well, that's not really a significant issue, is it really? And they go, well, you know, we have to, every fortnight, we have to log into these portals and we have to lodge these claims for people. And if we don't do this and they don't get paid, and then people are going hungry, and then families are going hungry. Small community, we're all members, and like, okay,
yeah,
understand, right? So not having that equipment to do the job is a massive, massive impact. And sometimes we as employers may be making the assumption or assessment on what the equipment is, and we don't ask.
No, yeah, and like I said, that modem, a couple $100. You can go buy, you know, you get the hell out of your modem for $400.
Yeah,
and would have saved at minimum a $15,000 claim.
that's right. Yeah. Unclear expectations, deadlines, and responsibilities. I didn't know that I needed to have that report done to you by this time, so you're yelling at me and I didn't know. Or you're making me feel like I haven't done my job because I didn't know, you didn't tell me that I had to have that report done. Or, you know, so really making sure that we are clear in our expectations. Our employees know what success looks like.
Yeah.
And we're improving our communication, because they're probably your top 6.
And it could all be from yourself as well. So like I said, I run my own business, and I can get to points where I've been trying to get everything done, and that starts getting me stressed out. Yeah, so I start worrying about everything, and then I give that, or I pass that on to my staff, which is, again, I need to communicate that better and say, look, I'm under pressure, I need these 10 things done. They help. But if I don't tell them that, and then I'm just running around being stressed all the time, then that's going to cause stress for them. That's just again.
All we think is that, you know, you went to your favourite takeaway the night before and they didn't have your favourite food, and that's why you're cranky.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, got to ask the question.
All
right. Next slide, Beck. I think that was it.
Is that it? We're done.
Oh, see, we didn't have a picture of Jamen to put there, so we just had to put his logo there.
That's because I've got the COVID beard. I've been growing it since February, so all the photos that I've taken are without the beard.
There's so many comments about the beard, but I'm
really
not going to say anything.
So it didn't even look like me anyway.
All right, so let's have a look at our questions. So I'm not sure if I can click on here. Let's have a look. Will it let me look at that? So we've got a question. At the last webinar, Phoebe said something, we should blame Phoebe for this one, along the lines of employees bring their mental health issues or diagnosis in, and it feels like a hand grenade going off, and from tiptoed around. We've tried to write out the worst till they come good. Cannot work. Okay, that's a bit of a long question, Dana. We might get you to give us a call back on that one. I think that might be a little bit too challenging for us to answer on a webinar. It
is pretty full on, but yeah, happy to have a chat. So yeah, either give myself or Dee a call. I'm happy to have a quick chat with you.
Cool. All right, so what if we have an employee that is continually taking leave and saying they have mental health issues, but whenever you ask them, are they okay, they say yes, and leave is generally after an event like State of Origin football games?
That doesn't happen, does it? Really not. Yeah, I would manage that again. So if you've got everything in place, as in you've got reasonable management, you've been showing them, you can show that you've been asking the question all the time, you can show that they've said yes all the time, and that you've got no other, other things in place, as in no other stresses in place, then I would manage this as a normal absentee issue. Yeah. And don't be scared of the mental health tag. Yeah.
Because mental health, it's important that we remember mental health is not a get out of jail free card.
Absolutely.
It is not a basic magic pass to breach workplace policies, conditions, and not follow processes, etc. So just because somebody has a mental health condition does not mean that we cannot manage poor performance.
Absolutely. So it'd be just the same, as I said, it'd be exactly the same as a physical injury. If someone came in and they're limping all the time, and you said, is there something, something going on, and we haven't got the right tools for you? Is there something that's not happening right? And then they say, no, everything's fine and everything is good in the workplace. Then you can start saying, well, you need to stop doing whatever it is you're doing outside of the workplace and come in here healthy so you can do the job.
Yeah.
So it's
ready, willing, and able to
so it's exactly the same. If somebody is constantly using that as an excuse and you've got everything in place, then I would pull them up on it and say, well, you can't just keep having days off work. You need to either come in and have the issue, and then we can start working through it and work out what the issue is, or I'm going to manage it as a normal absentee issue.
Yeah. And I think this comes back to that employee assistance program, because I was dealing with a claim that similar sorts of things, state of origin, etc. And the person did have an alcohol addiction issue, which sort of still does fall within the space of mental health, because
Yes.
addiction is a mental health, and obviously we have to be mindful of discrimination in relation to illness or impairment. This is where EAP programs can really supplement what you do as your checklists and everything else, because we don't have the skills and ability to be able to manage or counsel people in relation to addiction or anything like that. So having those EAP programs around, if you have the ability to have one, can really bolster what you're doing with the workplace to try and provide avenues to mitigate it.
Yeah, and I work with a lot of different businesses as well, and I'm not just saying trying to promote me, but because it goes across the board. But even external mentors. So I work as an external mentor for a number of different places, and it is just going into the workplace. I go in and just have a yarn and have a chat with everybody and make sure everything's fine. Sometimes they call me and sometimes they don't. So then I might get a call from a particular workplace that I'm doing mentoring for, and they just say, I have an issue. I had a big fight with my girlfriend. I don't want to talk to the workplace about it because I don't want them to know about it. Hey, I just wanted to have a chat. And if it is a medical thing that I can't help with, because I'm certainly not a psychologist or a counsellor, then I can say, well, okay, well, how about we get you referred on and liaise on with the employer to get that done? Or if it's something where they just need to talk to somebody outside the workplace, so they're not stressed about everybody in the workplace talking about them, it's a massive load off their chest. And I've been doing that for years now. And as I said, there's been probably a handful of cases where it's been a very serious issue where I needed to refer them on to a counsellor, a psychologist, a psychiatrist. But a majority of them is just need to let off some steam.
Yeah.
Someone's being really annoying in the workplace. I just need to have a bit of a yell about it to somebody that knows the workplace, that knows the people, that knows what they're doing in the workplace. And then, I can give a little bit of advice, but not huge amounts, and makes them feel better.
Good advice. All right, that looks like to be all our questions. Let me just check one more over here. Oh, a message from Nicole. Thank you for a great session. You are welcome, Nicole. So that is all we've got for today.
Yeah, and Diane, again, if you needed to just chat about that one.
Dana.
Dana, sorry. I need to.
You need my glasses.
I need my glasses. So Dana, so if you did need to chat, again, I'm very free to chat, not like charged or anything, obviously. I'm happy to have a bit of a chat and give you a little bit of advice from my point of view. Or I'm sure Deanne can help you as well.
Yeah. So thanks for your time today. We understand that it is a challenging issue. We were able to give you a couple of little tips and tricks on how to move forward, particularly into the new year with managing mental health in the workplace. I do think that we do have one webinar next week, but don't quote me on that. So just in case, have an awesome Christmas, team, and thanks for all your support throughout the year. Beck's trying to chime in over the top. Have you got something to say, Beck?
Yeah, you've definitely got a webinar next week. It's organised. It's a wrap-up of 2020, and we're going to review a fairly serious case about individual flexibility agreements, because we're going to finish 2020 with a bang.
Excellent.
And again, big apologies. Very sorry for changing the time.
You're forgiven.
Yeah.
You're forgiven.
COVID flights. I normally get a really late flight out tonight, and they don't exist anymore at the moment. So again, I apologise.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, thanks so much for your time today. Go forth and conquer. We'll see you next week, and Jamie, we'll see you next year.
Sounds good.
Thanks, team.
Bye. How do I end this?
You hit end.
There's no end option. Doesn't want it. There we go. End.
Stop recording.